A golem equal to a C-rank hero stands in the arena. The crowd watches as Jake Myers, prodigy of the Myers family, dismantles it bare-handed like it was never a threat to begin with. Before anyone finishes processing that, Erika Inoue sends an armored crow through a fully defended B-rank golem in a single pass. The arena erupts, then a nobody walks out. No family name, no backing, no reputation. Just a sword he forged himself and a level of mana that should not even qualify him to stand on the same stage as the previous two. The announcer calls for the standard golem. Lee Se-hoon stops him and asks for the strongest one available. Armored, B-rank equivalent. The kind that professional hunters approach carefully. The crowd goes quiet for a different reason now. 5 color flames rise from his blade. The heat alone forces Erika and Jake to shield themselves. He swings once. The explosion splits the arena floor clean open. In the stands, one question spreads faster than the smoke clears. Who the hell is this guy, and where did he come from? The story opens not with celebration, but with silence. Humanity has just won the impossible. All 6 demon gods, including the dreaded sea demon god, have been brought down, but victory tastes like ash. Most of the earth lies swallowed beneath a tsunami. The sea demon unleashed before its death, and the waters show no sign of stopping. Lee Se-hoon stares at the rising flood and wonders why winning feels exactly like losing. Even with the most powerful heroes the world had ever produced, the earth is destroyed. Killing the sea demon god changed nothing. The waves keep coming. A voice cuts through his thoughts, sharp and amused. Yeom-song tells him to stop making a scene, pointing out that anyone watching would think he had done everything himself. The silver-haired Louise Vallant wastes no time piling on, reminding Yeom-song that he spent most of the battle pretending to be sick before suddenly deciding to act tough. Amir Singh simply nods, noting he called it from the beginning. Yeom-song took charge of a legion just to coast on everyone else's effort. Lee Se-hoon cuts them all off. Without his gear, he reminds them flatly, they would have been dead before the first blow was ever thrown. His companions dismiss the claim immediately, insisting they would have managed just fine. Lee Se-hoon's response is simple. Return the gear then, if it meant so little. Silence falls instantly. Nobody moves. Nobody speaks. They all know the truth. These 3 are known as the 3 dogs. They never stood with humanity. They never stood with the demon gods either. They simply chose whichever side served them best at any given moment. Selfish to their core, ruthless in their survival. And yet, when it mattered most, they delivered. Lee Se-hoon knows that if they had committed even slightly earlier, the earth might still be whole. He asks them if they are all right. One by one, they admit the damage is severe. Lee Se-hoon doesn't sugarcoat it. They should have stepped in sooner, and they all know it. But before the words even finish leaving his mouth, all 3 collapse. He turns around. They are already gone. He stares at them for a moment and calls them idiots under his breath. Even at the very end, they had to go out maintaining their pride. He picks up his hammer. He forges a sword for each of them, simple and clean, and places one beside every fallen hero. Not a monument, not a ceremony, just a marker, so they would not disappear into the water nameless. When he finishes, he turns to face the tsunami. The wall of water stretches across the horizon, impossibly vast, closing in without mercy. He understands what comes next. He tells himself this will be the last time. He reaches inside himself and begins to extract his bond, the deepest part of what he is as a blacksmith, the foundation of every weapon he has ever created. The system confirms the extraction in silence. What emerges is a mana stone, dull and colorless. The system notes that the extracted ore's power varies depending on the user and their potential. Lee Se-hoon already understands what a colorless ore means. His bond is empty. He has given everything he had, down to nothing, and this hollow stone is all that remains. He almost laughs. If only he had awakened sooner. He sets the ore down and picks up his hammer anyway. Throwing it away changes nothing. He begins to work, driving the hammer down with the last scraps of strength left in his body. And then something strange happens. The sound shifts. The rhythm of the waves outside begins to echo differently in his ears, and he recognizes it immediately. That sound, the one that only comes when something extraordinary is about to be born from his hands. He lands the final blow. The result is a sword. Plain, no special ability. No glow, no power, nothing remarkable about it at all. He holds it up against the roaring sky and stares at it. Forged from his own bond ore, the last piece of himself he had left to give, and it turned out to be completely ordinary. He almost finds it fitting. He makes his choice. He will not drown. He will not be swallowed and erased by the sea like debris. If this is the end, it will be on his terms. He turns the blade toward himself and drives it home. A quiet smile settles on his face as the pain fades. From the very beginning to this final moment, all he ever did was hammer. That was enough. That was everything. The tsunami crashes down and takes him whole. Beneath the dark water, sinking fast, he hears it again, that sound. The same resonance he heard the day his powers first awakened, years and years ago. A thought surfaces through the cold and the silence. If he had found the 3 dogs sooner, if he had hammered not for survival but for others from the very start, things could have been different. Then the system erupts. Multiple notifications flood his vision at once. The imagery of armament has been manifested. A unique skill, Return to Origin, has been activated. He opens his eyes. Someone is calling his name. He is standing upright, dry, breathing. He looks around slowly, and the world he sees makes no sense. This is his entrance exam. The same hall, the same faces, the same nervous energy in the air. 31 years ago. He stands there trying to process whether this is some kind of dying hallucination or a recap of his life flashing before his eyes. Then he remembers the notification, Return to Origin. The sword he forged with his bond ore, the plain, powerless, utterly ordinary sword, somehow did this. The invigilator snaps at him to stop spacing out and start working before he gets thrown out. Lee Se-hoon connects the pieces. He has been sent back. 31 years. And this time, he will not waste a single day of it. Lee Se-hoon makes a silent promise the moment he picks up his hammer. He will pass this exam, and he will find the 3 dogs at the very beginning, before the world has any chance to fall apart the way it did before. He begins forging. The rhythm draws the attention of the supervising professor almost immediately. The old man approaches quietly, observing the strokes, and notes to himself that the pace is slow but the precision is immaculate. Every beat is perfectly rhythmic. The technique is beyond what any entrance candidate should be capable of. Lee Se-hoon completes the sword. The invigilator and the professor exchange a look. The work in front of them carries the mark of perfection. By any standard, submitting it now would guarantee a pass without question. Lee Se-hoon shatters it. The crack of breaking steel silences the entire room. He sets down the pieces and states plainly that presenting that kind of work would be an insult to the blacksmith's profession. The invigilator loses his composure entirely, demanding to know if the boy has lost his mind. Lee Se-hoon ignores him completely and addresses the professor directly, requesting permission to attempt the exam again. The invigilator begins to object. The rules exist for a reason. The professor turns and looks at him. One look. The invigilator immediately announces he will fetch the remaining materials right away. The professor pulls Lee Se-hoon aside and informs him that 30 minutes remain before the exam closes. Then he asks the only question that matters. Why destroy a perfect sword? Lee Se-hoon is quiet for a moment. He cannot submit something like that. That is all he offers. The materials arrive. He takes stock of his situation quickly. His current body is weak. The mana reserves are embarrassingly low compared to what he once had, and his physical strength is barely enough to work the forge properly. None of those matters. He begins. A nearby candidate notices him infusing mana directly into the material stones, and immediately warns that an incorrect application will cause an explosion. Lee Se-hoon does not look up. The flames rise. Panic spreads through the room. The invigilator turns to the professor demanding intervention. The professor raises a hand and orders everyone to be quiet, then points at the fire and tells them to look at it properly. What Lee Se-hoon has ignited is a 5-color fire demon, a rare, high-temperature flame produced by igniting material stones in a precise sequence. It demands exact control, but it operates efficiently even on minimal mana reserves. For someone working with next to nothing, it is the ideal method. The professor watches closely as the color of the iron begins to shift. The realization settles over him slowly. The boy has resonated the stones together, amplified the heat output, and altered the base properties of the ingot, all simultaneously, all within a compressed time frame. Even with 30 minutes remaining, completing a finished armament from this point would be considered nearly impossible. Lee Se-hoon does not stop. He pulls the iron from the flame, places it on the anvil, and hammers without pause. Then the mana runs dry. He feels the emptiness hit his limbs all at once and makes a mental note to train his body the moment this exam is over. He does not slow down. 10 minutes. 3 minutes. The invigilator counts down with increasing pressure. Lee Se-hoon sharpens the blade, checks the edge for any deviation, finds none, and sets down the hammer at the exact moment time expires. The system registers the achievement quietly. A C-rank skill, Artisan of the Flame, has been acquired. The room does not react immediately. The candidates stare, the invigilator stares. What sits on the table in front of them is a high-grade armament sword, produced in 30 minutes by an entrance examinee running on empty. The professor exhales slowly. He already knew the boy would finish in time. He steps forward before the invigilator can speak, covers the man's mouth with one hand, and tells Lee Se-hoon to follow him to his office. Inside, Lee Se-hoon assumes he is about to be told the sword was still not good enough. The professor studies him for a moment and then asks a different question entirely, whether he is actually satisfied with what he made. He then sets pretense aside completely. This institution, he explains, will not meet Lee Se-hoon's standards. The refining department at Babel has not produced meaningful results in years. He advises him to withdraw his application. The Vulcan Academy would serve his future far better. Lee Se-hoon already knows everything the professor is describing. 8 years from now, Babel's refining department will collapse entirely under the weight of its own declining standards. After that, Vulcan will rise to become the premier institution for blacksmiths in the country. The professor's advice is not wrong. He cuts him off anyway. The place he intends to enroll is Babel. That is not changing. The professor stares at him. He reminds Lee Se-hoon that enrolling at Babel means becoming the department valedictorian first, and asks directly whether he is confident in that. Lee Se-hoon answers without hesitation. At the student level, there is no one better than him. He is certain of that much. The professor asks him to walk through the selection process. Lee Se-hoon explains it cleanly. The valedictorian is determined through an additional examination between the two highest-ranked students in the department. Babel itself is divided into 3 departments: combat, support, and technology, each branching into a dozen specialized majors. Holding the valedictorian position means receiving the full backing of every major within the department. It is the Academy's official acknowledgement of its single greatest talent. The professor goes quiet. Then, speaking not as an examiner but as a senior blacksmith who has watched this institution for decades, he tries one more time. Even if Lee Se-hoon secures the valedictorian position, building a successful career as a blacksmith inside Babel will be an uphill battle from the first day to the last. Vulcan remains the wiser choice. Lee Se-hoon appreciates the honesty. The professor is genuinely trying to steer him toward a better future. He declines anyway. The difficulty of the path does not concern him. Babel is where he is going. The professor looks at him for a long moment, then extends his hand. Lee Se-hoon shakes it. The moment their hands meet, the system activates without warning. A bond extraction begins, pulling directly from the professor. What emerges is a high-grade flame-bearing iron, a material capable of storing fire internally, carrying properties closer to wood than metal. Unusual, useful. Back in his room that evening, Lee Se-hoon pulls up his status window. His stats are poor by any measure, falling well below the average Babel student. He already understands why. Returning through time carries a cost, and this is his. He sets it aside. There is still enough time to deal with the demon gods if he moves efficiently. He takes out the bond stone extracted from the professor and examines it. The quality is acceptable, but the quantity is small. Bond stones can only be drawn from specific individuals. They cannot be farmed or replicated. At his current level, even utilizing this stone properly presents a challenge. He reminds himself he cannot afford to be selective right now. He shifts focus. The events of the future are still clear in his memory, but memory fades. He needs to begin documenting the critical moments, the armaments, the skills, the turning points, before time blurs the details. The system interrupts his thoughts. A notification confirms that his bond level has reached level 1. A new skill has been unlocked: Bond Imprint. 1 week later, Lee Se-hoon is lost again. He wanders the corridors with mounting irritation before finally locating the correct exam room and stepping inside. The other candidates are already gathered. An older blonde-haired man at the front fixes him with a sharp look and asks whether he believes it is acceptable to keep everyone waiting. The professor calmly notes that the official examination has not yet begun. 10 minutes remain on the clock. The old man dismisses the technicality. It is not about the time, he insists. It is about attitude. Lee Se-hoon looks at him and immediately understands why the professor had been so persistent about transferring to a different academy. He turns to locate his opponent and spots another blonde across the room. He moves to acknowledge him. The blonde takes one look at Lee Se-hoon's appearance and turns away, with the same energy as your crush pretending she didn't see you walk in, ice cold. A third evaluator enters the room. The old blonde glances toward the door and remarks that he had begun to wonder when she would arrive. Lee Se-hoon turns to look. He goes completely still. Standing at the entrance, composed and unhurried, is someone he never expected to see here. He knows that face. He knows exactly who she is. Mommy Makima has entered the building. Lee Se-hoon had known she was somewhere inside Babel. That much had reached him as a rumor, but the dean, that he never saw coming. In his previous life, she carried a name that made veteran hunters uncomfortable, the S-rank weapon eater. Her unique skill allowed her to devour armaments entirely, absorbing their power and amplifying her own beyond normal limits. Before the regression, she had been a regular presence in his shop, one of his most consistent customers. She died fighting the demon gods. He watched it happen. The professor calls Lee Se-hoon's name sharply, pulling him back into the room. The examination rules are explained. 90 minutes. Within that window, each candidate must produce an armament capable of pairing with the sword they crafted in the previous test. The restriction is absolute. Only alchemy smithing may be used. Materials may be selected freely from the available boxes. When the armaments are complete, Makima and the old blonde will evaluate them. The professor orders them to begin. Lee Se-hoon thinks through the restriction immediately. Alchemy smithing using pure mana only. Elemental mana is out of the question. Introducing it without proper control risks, sending everything berserk mid-synthesis. The blonde interrupts his focus with a comment, asking whether staring at the materials is going to increase his mana capacity. Lee Se-hoon turns and asks if he was being addressed. The professor steps between them and tells both of them to get to work. Something clicks into place. The old blonde at the evaluation table, the young blonde across from him, father and son. Lee Se-hoon stares at the ceiling for a half-second. What a setup. The younger blonde catches his expression and smirks. He lays it out plainly. Lee Se-hoon is a commoner with no backing and limited mana. He himself comes from wealth, carries more raw mana capacity than most second-year students in the valedictorian department, and is trained under that advantage his entire life. The outcome, as far as he is concerned, has already been decided. Makima observes the blonde's material selection quietly. High mana content. Elementary grade with water attributes imbued throughout. The professor raises an eyebrow. Water and fire repel each other. Forcing them together through alchemy smithing is not straightforward. The old blonde waves the concern aside, noting that modern alchemy has long since moved past such limitations. The professor considers this. If that is truly the case, then synchronizing the caster's timing with the forging process while managing two opposing elemental properties simultaneously would require a remarkable level of control. The old blonde confirms it simply. His son can complete the synthesis within 30 minutes. The blonde begins. Makima watches, and a flicker of genuine interest crosses her face. The technique is at the level of a second-year student. The professor says nothing, but the realization settles cold and clear. This entire examination has been constructed to give the blonde every possible advantage. Lee Se-hoon reaches into the materials and pulls out a hydrate and a crimson firestone. Makima's attention shifts to him immediately. The old blonde scoffs and predicts failure on the spot. The younger blonde notices the crimson stone and nearly laughs. With the mana reserves Lee Se-hoon is working with, controlling a firestone at that level should be impossible. Then Lee Se-hoon begins, and the firestone responds perfectly. The blonde's smirk disappears. Lee Se-hoon activates Bond Imprint. He takes the flame-bearing iron extracted from the professor in his right hand and holds his selected materials in his left, channeling the bond between them with precise, unhurried control. The blonde watches and accuses him of using cheap tricks. His father declares that working with pure mana alone risks a catastrophic berserk reaction, that the armament will destabilize and endanger everyone in the room. Lee Se-hoon finishes the sentence for him by producing the result. The heat that radiates outward forces every person in the room to raise their arms against the wave of it. When the intensity settles, what sits on the anvil is a fire-accumulating stealth, a rare-grade armament capable of storing and channeling mana on command, bearing a skill designation of Wildfire. The blonde stares at it. Then he stares at his own synthesis. The question forming in his mind has no comfortable answer. How did a commoner with barely functional mana complete that synthesis faster than him without losing control once? The certainty he walked into the room carrying begins to fracture. His concentration slips. His father shouts at him to stabilize the reaction. It is already too late. The synthesis detonates. The explosion tears through the room. The smoke clears slowly. The professor steps forward and addresses the room with quiet authority. Under normal circumstances, the selection follows the completion of the exam. But given what just happened, the outcome is already decided. He announces that Lee Se-hoon has passed. The old blonde is on his feet before the words finish landing. His son is injured, he argues. The exam should be declared void and rescheduled. The professor reminds him, without raising his voice, that a re-examination cannot be conducted under these circumstances, and that every person in this room watched whose carelessness caused the accident in the first place. The old blonde does not back down. He pivots instead, questioning whether the professor values procedure over student safety. Then he shifts to a different angle entirely. A freshman, fresh into the academy, simultaneously activating mana and executing resonance at that level is not possible. It simply does not add up. Lee Se-hoon says nothing. He just stands there. He thinks through it privately. Alchemy smithing is a technique that finds the roots of an ore and draws out its full potential using pure mana. Unlike conventional smithing, which essentially kills the ore to shape it, the technique he used today was discovered much later through years of accumulated trial and error. Explaining that to a man like the old blonde would be a complete waste of breath. The old blonde demands an explanation anyway. Lee Se-hoon tells him he has no idea what he is talking about. That is enough to set him off completely. He accuses Lee Se-hoon of cheating outright. A freshman with no family backing and no notable lineage cannot produce a rare-grade armament through legitimate means. It is impossible. Therefore, it must be fraud. Lee Se-hoon's jaw tightens. He was not cheating. Then Makima speaks. She says it does not make sense, and she begins walking toward him as she says it. The old blonde seizes the moment immediately, urging her to disqualify Lee Se-hoon and proceed with a rescheduled exam. Makima walks past him without acknowledgement, as though he said nothing at all. She stops in front of the armament. She picks it up. She turns it over in her hands and says nothing for a long moment. Then she asks Lee Se-hoon in complete seriousness whether she can just have one bite. Or maybe just lick it once. The room goes completely silent. Out on the street, Lee Se-hoon walks with his hands in his pockets, turning over the flaws he noticed in the armament after the fact. Then the image of Makima holding his sword with that expression surfaces in his memory, and he starts laughing. A few people passing by give him a wide berth. Then a name surfaces from somewhere in the back of his mind. Barmut. He stops walking. He digs for it. And it comes back. Louise Vallant, the silver-haired woman from the battlefield at the end of everything, once told him about her time at Babel. She had saved up her own money and purchased an armament. It exploded in her hands. The mana burns left her weakened for an extended period, and the experience permanently sharpened the edge of her already cutting personality. She never forgave the person responsible. Lee Se-hoon puts it together in the street. The blonde. It was the blonde. His original plan had been simple: find the 3 dogs as early as possible and change the timeline from there. But this changes the order. Louise does not need to be his immediate priority. What matters now is stopping the blonde before that armament ever reaches her hands. If he can do that, the mana burns never happen. Louise stays at full strength, and maybe, just maybe, things unfold differently. He smiles and sets the new course. Meanwhile, inside a conference room, the faculty sits in stunned silence as Makima lays out her intention to designate Lee Se-hoon as the department valedictorian. The objections come from every direction at once, and Lee Se-hoon strongly suspects the old blonde has been feeding lines to half of them. The arguments pile up. The armament is only 60% complete. It is technically insufficient. The gaps in the work disqualify it from serious consideration. The professor has heard enough. He tells them plainly that despite having eyes, they are choosing not to see. The armament is not flawless. He will grant them that. But the mana application behind it is unlike anything produced at the student level. That cannot simply be dismissed. Makima lets the noise run its course. Then she speaks. If the faculty cannot align with her recommendation after witnessing Lee Se-hoon's demonstration with their own eyes, she will step down as dean, effective immediately. The room goes very quiet. The arena fills with the voice of an old man addressing the gathered crowd. 6 years ago, he explains, the heavens delivered the towers of heroes to accelerate humanity's evolution. The demon gods responded in kind, unleashing their armies in opposition. From that crucible, countless heroes emerged, many of them trained within Babel's walls. He tells the audience they could become one of them. Lee Se-hoon watches from a distance. He recognizes the man immediately. Ludwig Schubert, known as the Ascension Emperor, an ugly name. The old man will do just fine. From the outside, he projects the image of a principled leader. The reality is considerably more complicated. The announcer steps forward and explains the structure of the valedictorian showcase. Each candidate will demonstrate their abilities to secure the highest possible score. They are called to the stage one by one. Lee Se-hoon thinks about the candidates he remembers from his past life, the ones who carried themselves like they owned every room they walked into because, inside Babel, they practically did. He understands now why that arrogance was so consistent. The competition at the top was real. The announcer reveals the demonstration target with visible excitement, a golem produced by the Marionette Factory, possessing combat ability equivalent to a C-rank hero. Lee Se-hoon looks it over. No armament. He wonders whether it has been trained specifically in hand-to-hand combat. The first candidate is called, another blonde, of course, Jake Myers, third son of the Myers family. An unusual case, a swordsman bloodline that produced someone who fights with his bare hands. Lee Se-hoon watches him settle into his stance. The golem moves first, driving a heavy blow forward. Jake sidesteps it cleanly. The golem accelerates, throwing a rapid sequence of strikes that would overwhelm most opponents. Jake moves through all of it without effort and then simply disappears. He reappears directly at the golem's blind spot and begins dismantling it. Methodical, controlled, punishing. He corners it and ends the fight with a single closing blow. Lee Se-hoon is genuinely surprised. In his previous life, Jake died in his mid-20s holding an A-rank designation. Standing here watching him now, the word prodigy does not feel like enough. He wonders, not for the first time, what went wrong the first time around. The next name is called Erika Inoue. Lee Se-hoon's expression does not change, but his attention sharpens. Eldest daughter of the Inoue family. One of Japan's 3 greatest bloodlines, she did not climb on the family name, she earned every rank through her own work. In the end, Majin corruption claimed her, and her own family was forced to subjugate her. Getting close to Erika leads nowhere useful. He will keep his distance. She glances directly at him as she walks to the stage. He blinks. The replacement golem is already equipped. Armor installed, defense rating increased by 1.5 compared to Jake's opponent. Erika sets down a birdcage. Inside it, a single crow. She opens the cage and tells it to go. The crow climbs into the air. The golem shifts immediately into a defensive stance, tracking the bird from below. Lee Se-hoon notes the problem. Attacking through that guard against that armor from the air should be extremely difficult. Then the crow begins equipping its own armor mid-flight. It hits the golem like a bolt, one pass. The golem does not get back up. The arena reacts all at once. Lee Se-hoon exhales slowly. He is next. From the elevated viewing section, Ludwig Schubert watches the demonstrations with quiet satisfaction. The candidates this cycle are operating on a different scale entirely. It has been some time since he witnessed this quality at the showcase level. Makima sits beside him and says nothing. Internally, she is watching for one thing, whether Lee Se-hoon can do what Jake and Erika just did. The crowd is already cheering before he reaches the stage. Lee Se-hoon draws the sword he forged during the exam. A large display screen activates behind him, pulling up its specifications for the audience. The identification is immediate, rare-grade armament. The murmuring begins just as quickly. Compared to the raw physical output they just witnessed, a rare-grade weapon seems underwhelming. The consensus forms fast. He cannot match Jake or Erika, not with that. The old blonde settles back in his seat, satisfied. If Lee Se-hoon fails here, the dean's position becomes available. Makima has placed everything on this. Lee Se-hoon stops the announcer before he can call for the standard golem. He requests the strongest available variant, armored, combat-ready, equivalent to a B-rank hero. The announcer stares at him. The golem being requested would challenge seasoned hunters. He tells Lee Se-hoon flatly that preparation takes time and asks whether he is trying to fail deliberately. The professor appears from the side with the golem already staged. The announcer closes his mouth and tells Lee Se-hoon to begin. The professor watches from the edge and says one thing: destroy it. Lee Se-hoon draws on his mana and channels it into the blade. 5 color flames rise from the sword in layered bands of shifting light. In the stands, Erica goes still. Jake leans forward with something close to the light on his face. Somewhere behind them, the blonde starts talking about cheap tricks, because the alternative is admitting what he is actually watching. The control required for what comes next is precise. 5-color fire carries clashing elemental properties. If the user's management slips even slightly, the feedback burns inward rather than outward. Lee Se-hoon channels the flames into his fire-accumulating stealth armament, stores them internally, then reintroduces the crimson component through Artisan of the Flame. The pressure inside the blade builds to a point that the air around it begins to distort. He activates Wildfire. Jake and Erica throw their arms up against the wave of heat that rolls through the arena. Lee Se-hoon swings. The explosion is significant. When the air settles, a massive shear line splits the arena floor from one end to the other. The announcer calls for the construction crew without looking away from the cut in the ground. Later, Lee Se-hoon sits alone in a side room staring at nothing. The damage was excessive. He knows that. He ran the variables and still let it go further than he should have. The door opens. Makima enters and apologizes for being late. Lee Se-hoon starts to apologize for the arena. She stops him and asks why he is apologizing to her. He assumes she called him in to be reprimanded. She tells him that is not why he is here. Her stomach growls, loudly. The silence that follows is absolute. She recovers her composure, takes a breath, and offers to pay him 10 times the market value for the 5-color sword. She would very much like to purchase it. She takes his hands in both of hers and tells him the sword is extraordinary. The system activates immediately. The bond from Makima is available for extraction. Lee Se-hoon processes this quickly. In his previous life, drawing her bond required feeding her a sustained volume of armaments over an extended period. The fact that it is accessible now, this early, is an opportunity he cannot pass on. He agrees to the extraction before she finishes speaking. The system draws it out. The bond is identified as Gluttony of Iron. High grade, supreme quality. The attributes display one by one. It consumes iron to generate heat and mineral blood. Any iron that makes contact with it corrodes instantly. Given enough time, it can dissolve the core of a metal structure entirely. Makima calls his name. She asks if he is selling the sword. He tells her no. A knock at the door cuts the conversation short. The professor steps inside and tells Lee Se-hoon to follow him. Lee Se-hoon excuses himself and takes his leave. Poor Makima, still hungry. Inside Ludwig Schubert's private study, the professor reminds Lee Se-hoon quietly to conduct himself appropriately. The old man personally covered the costs of the arena damage. Lee Se-hoon tells him not to worry about it. The professor looks like he is already worrying about it. The old man greets Lee Se-hoon by name the moment he enters. Lee Se-hoon looks at him and remembers. This man stood alone against one of the demon gods and did not survive the encounter. He says nothing about that. Ludwig acknowledges the armament produced during the examination. His standards are high, he notes, but the work demonstrated today merits recognition. As tribute to that effort, he extends an offer. 2 rewards, freely chosen, no restrictions. Lee Se-hoon takes a moment. He asks for items that can expand both his mana capacity and his memory retention. The old man moves his hand through the air in a brief gesture. 2 objects descend from a strange floating armament hovering nearby. The first is a heavy ink rock. It draws mana from everything it comes into contact with and stores it. The second is dream ivory, a material that allows the user to cross the boundary between waking reality and the dream state. Lee Se-hoon recognizes both immediately. Rare does not begin to cover it. He accepts without hesitation and takes his leave. After he is gone, the floating armament addresses the old man. It notes that 2 rewards is unusual. Others have never received that. Ludwig says simply that the potential he saw warranted it. The armament presses further. It says Lee Se-hoon felt older than he appears. Like something about him does not quite match the exterior. Ludwig considers this. He admits that even he could not read the boy clearly, and that, he says, is itself interesting. Back in the classroom, the blonde fields an invitation to lunch from a nearby student. He declines with a carefully constructed air of indifference. He has plans with Senior Howard. The student's demeanor shifts instantly. He begins laying compliments thick and fast. The blonde adds that their families have always been close, and Howard personally reached out to offer guidance on academy life. What a shit-talkers. Then Lee Se-hoon walks into the room. One glance. The entire atmosphere changes. The blonde's composure evaporates. Lee Se-hoon notices and moves on without comment. The blonde has figured out where he stands. Good. The professor enters behind him and announces a class task. An assistant brings out the material, projection alloy. It is extraordinarily sensitive to mana input. Inject mana into it and the armament it produces is shaped entirely by thought. What the mind holds, the alloy becomes, the professor demonstrates. The result is immediate and clean. Lee Se-hoon watches and quietly revises his assessment of the man upward. The professor adds the caveat. Because the alloy responds to subconscious impulse as readily as conscious direction, controlling the output is significantly harder than it appears. The resulting constructs carry traits that mirror the maker's own nature, instincts, tendencies, things the maker may not even be aware of. These are called alter egos. For the next week, every armament in the refining department will be replaced by the alter ego each student produces today. He tells them to do their best. The students go one by one. Lee Se-hoon watches the results accumulate. Each piece of projection alloy costs over 10 million per unit. The demonstration ceremony of Babel is genuinely painful to observe at this price point. The outputs are, without exception, unremarkable. He was hoping someone here would surprise him. He does not want to be the only one standing out. His turn arrives. He steps forward and holds the alloy. He considers the situation. His abilities are no longer a secret after the showcase. There is no point pretending otherwise. He makes his decision and channels his mana into the material. The classroom explodes.